Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Shift Church. You guys look downright ugly. It's amazing. That's a good one. That one, you. Someone get them an award. That's the best one. Anyways, if this is your first time here, you can scan this QR code, and if you fill out the Connect card, we'll send you some free Opus coffee. And make sure you check out the Coffee with Joe section so you can enjoy some coffee with Joe, either in person or online, so you can ask any and all questions that you want to know about Shift. Because today is an all-family service, make sure you grab your packets. They're at the front when you walk in. And go to our YouTube channel and watch their Treehouse video lesson. Next week, December 31st, will be our annual Sabbath Sunday. So no teaching, no online service, nada. Stay home, rest, reflect, and think back of all the good that happened this year, and any of it that's not good, let it go and set intentions for the next year. And that was short and sweet, but that's all I got for you today. So let's jump into week 4 of Holy Moments.
We did it. We survived another year. I think that 2023 has felt like the shortest year since we flew off our original timeline. But I think that next year is going to make up for it and feel like several years rolled into one. So we should just enjoy the next few days, right? The next week while we can. We have come here at Shift. We've come to the end of our Christmas series that we've called Holy Moments. Week number 1, we dove into the birth narratives and kind of looked at the cultural and political backdrops where they were told, right? They didn't happen in a vacuum. And then Jen did an amazing job talking about walking through Mary's story from the perspective of a mom and a nurse. Last week we looked at Joseph, and I don't know about you, but for myself I learned several things that I had never been taught before. One of the main ones is that according to the Christmas story, biblical manhood looks like quiet submission while women take center stage. And today we focus on the birth announcements as seen through the story of the Magi and the Shepherds. Now, when I tell you that there have been very few times in my life where I felt out of place, I mean that. Just a handful of times. I don't know if it's by nature or nurture or some combination of both, but I am a very self-confident human being. And so by default, my default whenever I walk into a room is, this is my room. And if I were a big jerk, that could be a problem, but thankfully I'm not. Mostly, right? Mostly. But what it does allow me to do is that I'm comfortable in almost any room I walk into. Now, one of those times took place in the early 2000s. I was a youth pastor up in a rural town up in northern Missouri called Macon, and we had an amazing band. Our youth group had an amazing band. Like they were awesome. They called themselves 242 after the book of Acts, chapter 2, verse 42. You can go look it up later. They recorded an album, and we even booked gigs for them. They had all these like different youth groups, and so we actually had a bus, and we traveled around on the weekends to different churches and stuff. We even played the Missouri Christian Teen Convention a couple of times, which was pretty cool for them. And I was in my mid-20s, like 25, 26, right in there, and I was full-on Christian nationalist, evangelical youth pastor Joe, all right? And I looked like it. I wore like the Ed Hardy style, shirts and pants, I'm pretty much guaranteed there was probably an American flag in there somewhere with a gun or something. Camo shorts, spiky hair. I had the wide leather watch, it had the leather band and the watch and stuff. I had all the drip, as the kids say today. But the icing on the cake, like the cherry on top, that completed the entire ensemble was the wallet chain. I had a big old fat wallet chain. Like, I mean, it just looped way down, right? It was amazing. I was pretty cool, man. All right. Now, I need you to picture this. Okay, I need you to put this into your brain, because one of the groups that reached out to us to play was, now again, it's a small rural town in northern Missouri. I will tell you that it's like 99 point something percent white milk. I mean, white bread. It's as homogenous as you can get. And we had, in the town, we had one historically black church. And that was the group that hollered at us to come play for a Juneteenth celebration. And so I was like, that's great. I just need you to know what kind of music we play. And they were great with it. So they invited us. So we showed up, right? And we set up all of our equipment ahead of time, and then we kind of joined in on the festivities and stuff. And I'm wearing what I normally wear. Our teens stroll in. They're dressed like Mean Girls meets Bring It On meets High School Musical, and we come strolling in, and everybody else is dressed like it's church. Okay, I mean, beautiful dresses, the suits, the hats. They looked amazing, and I'm in here jingling around like, what's up, bro? We were way underdressed, and I felt completely, like I almost felt disrespectful. You know what I mean? Like, not meaning to, but that's just how it was. And as the different groups got up, they had like men's choirs and women's choirs, and they had different kinds of performances and stuff. And as the day wore on, I really started to get nervous, because like, we're nothing like that. Like, it just doesn't sound it. They were really good, but it had like, the band had like this Foo Fighter, Nirvana sound to it, just because that's what the kids were really into. It wasn't even close to the other groups. So it was our turn, and my heart's pounding, and the kids get up and they start playing. And everybody, knew the songs, and all of my young, naive, white privilege worries just kind of fell by the way, because everybody loved the kids. They were clapping and dancing and singing and all of the stuff. And they made us feel right at home. And it was such an awesome experience that I still remember it 20 plus years later, right? I think that everybody here in person or on the stream online can relate to not feeling like we don't belong, like we're in the wrong place. Now, that story was just a short, humorous version of that, right? But for some of us, for some people, they feel that all the time. And for others, they're being made to feel that way, particularly by our state. Now, believe it or not, one of the major themes of the birth stories is this idea of the outcast. The authors of Matthew and Luke go out of their way to make sure that the audience knows that Jesus is for the outcast, that Jesus is for the outsider. And from the very beginning of those Gospels, they make sure that everyone knows that Jesus is showing up to include the people that religion is pushing out. So let's start with the Magi. Matthew chapter 2. This group of men, they come from the east, they go to King Herod, and Herod begins to interview them, and this is where we find it. We pick up the story in verse 9. It says, after this interview, the wise men went on their way, and the star they had seen in the east guided them to Bethlehem. It went ahead of them and stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were filled with joy. They entered the house and saw the child with his mother, Mary, and they bowed down and worshipped him. Then they opened their treasure chests and gave him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Now, first, they weren't kings, okay? Like the song kind of describes them. They weren't kings. They were Zoroastrian astrologers from Western Iran. Second, we have no clue how many they are. There were, all right? There were 3 gifts, but we don't know if that means that there were 3 people. And we don't know their names. So this time of year, that stuff starts getting passed around on social media and on YouTube, and you'll never believe what we've discovered. Okay, and that's how they always do it. They talk like this. That's all just junk theology, just rooted in conspiracy theories, all right? They did worship their own gods, they had their own kings, and they had their own teachings when it came to celestial signs like a moving star or a comet. And they were bad news. They were bad news. They weren't good news. They weren't something to follow. And the author would have known all of this and included it in the story anyway. Why? Hang on to that. Let's look at the shepherds in Luke chapter 2. So what happens is there's an angel appears to them, proclaims the good news that's going to be that will bring joy to all people. A whole host of angels shows up, sings a song about the Christ child, and then this in verse 15 that we have for you. When the angels had returned to heaven, the shepherds said to each other, "Let's go to Bethlehem. Let's see this thing that has happened, which the Lord has told us about." They hurried to the village and found Mary and Joseph, and there was the baby lying in the manger. After seeing him, the shepherds told everyone what had happened and what the angel had said to them about this child. All who heard the shepherd's story were astonished, but Mary kept all these things in her heart and thought about them often. Just a side note, yes, Mary did know. The shepherds went back to their flocks, glorifying and praising God for all they had heard and seen. It was just as the angel had told them. Now, I have always heard and been taught that shepherds were dirty people. Like even criminal, right? That they would have been considered unclean. They wouldn't have been allowed in the temple and all of this stuff. I could not find any actual evidence of that. I couldn't find any actual evidence that. The people that I do read and that I do follow tell us that tradition didn't start till much later in church history and has little to no basis in fact. However, they were working class blue collar people. And Luke's language for the proclamation of this new gospel mirrors the pronouncement of new Caesars. The difference being who the announcement was to, right? Now, the author of Luke would have known all of this and included it anyway. Why? Hang on to that. Now we're going to take a hard left turn here. There's no easy transition to this. The biggest organized movement in the American Christian world is that of white Christian nationalism. Now, this may not sound very Christmassy, but hang with me. It is also the single biggest threat to our country and to our democracy. And we've talked about this before, and we will again, specifically in our February series, Taboo. And I say that because they have a very narrow, specific, puritanical view of religion, and they are working hard to create a theocracy, a church-run government, all right? They believe at their foundation that by doing so, they are setting the stage for the end times and the return of Christ. Now, their view of Christianity is one of exclusion. And coming from that world, and I did come from that world, I don't care what's said publicly, their faith is based on what you think about God. And anyone outside of that is not part of them and is going to hell, and some of them will tell you that gleefully. Last week, I don't know if you saw, some of you probably didn't, a lot of you probably didn't, but there was America Fest. America Fest is a Christian nationalist conference that's put on by Charlie Kirk's Turning Point USA. On the stage, one of the keynote speakers was Steve Bannon, an insurrectionist and grifter. He gave a speech where he demonized anyone that's not part of them, literally calling us demons. Not humans, but we're demons. And then, 20 minutes later, on that same stage, a worship band came out and led everybody in the audience in worship, all right? Their faith is more of a political identity or a political ideology, and it is based squarely on who is in them and who is out, the rest of us. Groups like this are the Pharisees of our day, and as Jesus puts it in Matthew 23:13, can you go ahead and show that? Jesus says, "What sorrow awaits you, teachers of religious law, and you Pharisees, hypocrites, for you shut the door of the kingdom of heaven in people's faces. You won't go in yourselves, and you don't let others enter either. What sorrow awaits you, teachers of religious law, and you Pharisees, hypocrites, for you cross land and sea to make one convert, and then you turn that person into twice the hell of child you yourselves are." Now, I'm not sure that I could describe that any better than Jesus did. And I think this is why, maybe now more than ever, it is vital that we understand the context to these birth narratives. The authors included these stories for a purpose. They aren't just historical events that we have to debate the validity of. There's a reason that they're there. Why? The story of the Magi in Matthew's gospel reminds us of the universal invitation to seek and encounter the divine. As you look at their journey from the east, which is guided by a celestial sign, we're reminded that God's love transcends borders and cultures. And our call is to embrace a spirituality that recognizes the sacredness in diverse expressions and fostering a sense of curiosity and openness to the rich tapestry of human experience. The Magi are considered pagan astrologers, but they were included in the story of Christ's birth as a challenge to force us to question societal norms and prejudices. Now, our faith in Jesus and his path demands that we challenge exclusivity, recognizing that God's message is for everyone, regardless of race, nationality, religious systems, orientation, gender expressions, political affiliations, and on and on. The Magi teach us to break down barriers and welcome all into the embrace of God's love. The shepherds. The shepherds, marginalized in their society as lower working class people, they play a hugely crucial role in the birth narrative. Their presence at the manger reminds us that God often reveals the divine in unexpected places and among the overlooked. The fact that the God of the universe, the God of the cosmos, chose to use proclamation language to lower class people and not to the kings and princes of the age shows us where we can find God residing. God resides not in the halls of power, but among those that the halls of power take advantage of. This calls us to actively seek the sacred in the marginalized and oppressed while advocating for justice and standing in solidarity with those on the fringes of society. And that symbolic convergence of the Magi and the shepherds around the manger signifies the building of an inclusive community around the Christ child. And as an inclusive faith community, we must imitate that unity, right? Celebrating our diversity and recognizing that each and every one of us brings something unique to the table. So together, we are a living testament to the transformative power of love, breaking down divisions and building a community that mirrors the radical inclusivity exemplified in the birth narratives. That's the why. That's the answer. So when the Steve Bannons and the Charlie Kirks and the Ron DeSantises of our world work to marginalize our queer siblings, when they try to erase Black history, and when they demand women get out of the workplace and back into the kitchen, when they fight to roll back protections and recreate some inane Back to the Future 1950s America that is in some way their warped version of heaven, this is how we combat all of that. Yes, we vote. Yes, we speak out. Yes, we work against, but we are not just against something. We have this beautiful, subversive alternative. And the birth story of the Christ child breaks down all of the stereotypes, throws the doors of heaven wide open. It propels us into the already here but not yet arrived kingdom of God. It combats the lies that somehow humans are unworthy of God and God's love, and declares to every single person that has ever walked this planet that you are worthy. You sitting in that chair, you watching online, are worthy of love and dignity and respect. And so many of you have been shown and told otherwise. And I wish that we could take all of that pain away and we could make all of it better, but we can't. So what we will do is tell you that you were lied to, that they were wrong, that they are closing the doors of the church, But Christ came to kick down those doors and usher in a new way. And not only are you worthy of being in, now Jesus is asking you to be the ones that actually lead this new way. And the church so desperately needs you. The American church has been in bed with political power for so long that many of us can't even imagine what that would look like without it. Which is why the Magi, which is why the shepherd, which is why a carpenter dad and why an unwed teenage mom. We need you to lead this with all of your pain and all of your baggage and all of your beauty and trauma and brokenness and healing, all of it. See, Christmas is God wrapping themselves in flesh to throw down the powers that be and elevating the least of these to usher in a new heaven and a new earth. Christmas is a spiritual dawn breaking upon a world shrouded in darkness, a light that transcends challenges and the struggles of human experience. Christmas is a symbol of hope and compassion and the universal pursuit of goodwill. And no matter how many city blocks of rubble you try to bury it, under. This light of hope will never be extinguished. Christmas is more than tinsel and trees and presents. It's more than mangers and songs and candlelight services. It is the announcement of a new way, a better way. One that ushers aside military might. One that does away with dollar-based worth and utterly destroys our systems that oppress. Christmas is a thin place where heaven meets earth. Christmas is a glimpse of Eden restored. And it is an invitation to all humanity to partner with the divine in bringing flourishing to our world. There is no conclusion. There's no conclusion because this story cannot end. Our job is to embody this story every day, day in and day out for the rest of our lives, to hand this story on to the next generation and pray that they live it out better than we did. And on and on and on until the story is actually over. If you're new with us, we end with a time of reflection. And we do that to take the emotion out of the moment and get back in touch with ourselves and with spirit. So we want to take a moment to hear what God and our bodies are saying to us. And I'll ask some questions to guide that. The band will come up and begin to play. We'll turn the lights down to create that physical space. And I'll pray. After we will take communion together, and those are those little cups that you find in your chair. These are the symbols of the life, death, teaching, death, and resurrection of Jesus. And today we're going to finish a little different. You'll notice the candles in your seat. After communion, you'll be invited to stand and sing. Grab those candles, and people will come by with a lighter. They'll come to your row and light a candle, and then you, in turn, will light the person next to you, and so on until everybody's candle is lit. And we will close the service with O Holy Night, and then a few encores. So my first question that I have for you today is this. We often fairy tale these familiar stories and look past true meanings. And so what have you discovered or rediscovered about these birth stories? How does your answer to that first question impact how you live going forward? What does it mean to you personally? And lastly, how can we, as a faith community, actively embody this in what we do? Let's pray. God, in the rubble, we thank you for this season and this time that we share together weekly. Thank you for the counterculture nature of these stories, how they speak to our souls, how they call us to more, call us to make an impact. I pray that you throw down the empires within each of our hearts. Tear down the walls of our self-built kingdoms and help us to see where we keep the other out. Pray that you break the chains that keep us in submission to the things that are not worthy of us, and that we are free to be loved and to love. We thank you for the teachings of Jesus. May they guide our paths and our hearts. In your name we pray. Amen.